fairly ugly screen. The Nifty is now down almost 100 points, 92 points gone, and the market breadth is very weak. So 1:3 now in favor of declines. Looks like it's going to be quite a disappointing day for the bulls. The bank Nifty has lost almost 1%. But time now for our movers and shakers segment. Let me start with Nigel. He's watching some of the steel stocks. Nigel, why is that?
Well, Sonia, all these steel stocks are under some pressure. Clearly, there is one headwind in terms of Trump and, the tariff measures and the war that's going on between the United States and China. But I was looking at a couple of data points. And in fact, the National Bureau of Statistics, they come out with a data point in terms of how much of steel is produced in China. And that's the data point that came over this weekend. And if we're looking at it, the Chinese steel production numbers are looking very, very high in comparison on a month-on-month basis as well as on a year-on-year basis. So in the month of May 2019, China has produced nearly around 89 million tons. That's the highest that I've seen in the last many, many months. So on a month-on-month basis, that data point is telling you that the growth is of around 5% odd. And on a year-on-year basis, it's nearly around 9 to around 10% odd. From January till May itself, China's production of steel is up by nearly around 10% at around 405 million tons. So now this entire steel rally started off when China started cutting down production and closing some of those furnaces. So clearly this data point is one of those factors that has got investors concerned today. Tata Steel is under pressure, JSW Steel as well, both of them the biggest losers today. Yes, last week the metal index was a relative outperformer, up more than 1% when the markets ended in the red. But today I think this is the particular data point that the street is taking note of. Higher steel production from China, not great news at all. As it is, we have the trade war barriers. That's something that's
impacted demand
absolutely,
as well. So, all right.
Absolutely. And if China is going to produce more and they can't send it to the United States, they may send it to other destinations where India steel producers, and when India steel producers are sending their steel, they'll start putting their steel out there, and maybe some of that steel will also come into India. So not great news for steel stocks and ferrous stocks, all of them down anything between 3 to around 4%.
Okay, well, demand concerns, higher production, lots of issues in that sector. But Reliance Infrastructure has completely been bashed as the street is very nervous on account of the auditor observations and the pledge issues. We did, in fact, speak to the management on a whole host of issues ranging from the auditor comments, monetization plans, and their confidence to meet all their debt obligations. Here are some key takeaways from that conversation.
In Reliance Power also, we have impaired our investment by 2,000 crore. Given that, I think when you are talking about we have given the advances. So as I was telling you, the prudent policy is that not only receivables to be done, but when you give the advances, you need to provision that. So we have provisioned 2,000 crore over there, but that does not mean we have right of that, because we believe these are the delays in the project and it would be recovered in the near future as and when these projects are completed. Reliance Infra has no plan to raise any more debt on its books. We are looking forward to pay off all the debt in our book through the monetization and through the regulatory assets which are unapproved as the money comes in. I think these are business as usual, some of the stuff which you take approval from your board, and these are the provisions which have been made into the accounts. For that purpose, I believe that some of the cases are, where judgment is reserved or it is the final hearing going to happen, like in Delhi Metro, in the Supreme Court in month of July. I do expect that, in the Q2 and Q3, some of the judgments would come. And I think that is where I'm expecting that in this fiscal year, at least there would be realization of anywhere between 5,000 crore to 7,500 crore.
Okay, there's some more selling that's creeping into the market, so just keep an eye out on the screen. Now we are down 100 points actually. A lot of stocks are selling off. Tata Steel has moved even lower. ICICI Bank, I think that's the one that's suddenly fallen closer on 0.5% in the last 10 minutes. And that explains the, the downtick of around 10-15 points that we've seen. Yeah, there it is. ICICI Bank was holding more or less flattish. That's down close to around 1% now. And that's the one that's putting some pressure on the index as we speak. Even a HUL that was otherwise holding with some gains, that as well is moving lower. In fact, we have some news. ICICI Bank has cut some retail term deposits by around 10 to around 25 basis points odd. So not great news from clients' point of view as well. Deposit rates being cut by around 10 to around 25 basis points odd. Stock moving to the low point of the day. Let's hop across to Sonal though. She's joining in to tell us all those other stocks that are on the news. Hey Sonal.
Thanks a lot for that, Nigel. I'll start with JN Irrigation. That stock continues to decline in trade. In fact, now promoters have additionally pledged 35 lakh shares, that is around 0.7% of the total equity. And now the promoter pledge stands at 14.7%, that is over 50% of the total promoter holding of 28.6 odd percent. Moving on, some pharma stocks that are in focus today. For instance, Laurus Labs. Well, US FDA has completed the inspection of its API facilities in Unit 1 and 3. They have issued 2 observations in Form 483, but the company says these are largely procedural in nature and not very serious. Talking about Form 483, well, Divi's Labs has received a Form 483 for one of their Andhra Pradesh unit, and the facility was inspected from 1st to 15 June for good manufacturing practices, and the company has received 0 observations, and that's why the stock is up and about in a weak market. These oil marketing companies will also be in focus because PPAC has released the monthly petroleum consumption data, and it is actually flat on a year-on-year basis. However, there is a sequential improvement of 5%, and also this compares with 0.3% growth that we saw in the last month, and also 0.6% that we saw in May 2018. However, interestingly, the ATF demand has gone up by 3% on a YY basis, 5% on a sequential basis. Petrol and diesel demand have also gone up. So this is a positive sign. Back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Well, moving on, Nigel, you're watching Prakash Industries today?
Yeah, Prakash Industries and Prakash Pipes. We're focusing on Prakash Pipes because that one listed a couple of trading sessions ago. Today, the stock is locked in upper circuit yet again. Remember, it will be in that T2T band for around 10 trading sessions odd. So it's up close to around 5% odd. Remember, this is the demerged arm of Prakash Industries. And in fact, it has the PVC pipes as well as flexible packaging division as well. I was looking at the numbers, Sonia. If you're looking at it, they've grown by roughly around 10-11% approximately on the last 3 years on a CAGR number out there, and margins of around 12.5 to around 13% approximately. Now, just looking at the FY19 EBITDA, that was at around 43 crores approximately. Today, the market capitalization is around 202 crores approximately. That means that the company had listed at around 4.5 times EV upon EBITDA. Remember, some of the peers, they trade like an Apollo Pipes that trades at around 10 times EV upon EBITDA. So the market is not willing to give it value at all. Even after this 5% move on Friday and 5% move today, it's still trading at around 4.6 times EV upon EBITDA. Just want to alert our viewers on that stock. Though it's locked in upper circuit, it's actually trading at a significant discount, and the market is not willing to give it valuations. And if you're looking at the erstwhile Prakash Industries, Sonia, we know that the promoters have got quite a reputation for so many years odd. And on Friday, the stock is at around 65 rupees. They converted warrants at more than 200 rupees. But the market's not having any of that. The stock is still trading in the red. Even in Friday's trading session, it was down. So that's telling you the kind of confidence the market has in some of these tainted names or some of these promoters who have big corporate governance issues. 2 stocks, Prakash Pipes, up close to around 5% today, but keep an eye out on that stock. And Prakash Industries is not reacting to the big warrant conversion.
Okay, well, here's a quick recap of our top buzzing stocks today. Stocks like Tata Steel, Vedanta, Reliance Infra, Prakash Industries, and Prakash Pipes, along with JN Irrigation, Laurus Labs, Divi's Labs, as well as oil marketing companies like HPCL, BPCL, and finally IOC. But the change in the new accounting standards from AS 17 to IND 116 is likely to impact the balance sheet of companies with high lease expenditures like multiplexes and retailers. To find out more on how this would impact them, Sonal joins in to give us the details. Sonal, over to you.
Thanks a lot for that, Sonia. Well, just to give you a perspective, what the CLSA report says is that Accounting Standard 17 will get converted to Ind AS 116, where the operational leases will get transferred to financial leases. What it would mean is that all the ownership and the risk will get transferred to the lessee when they actually lease any asset. Now, in current financial leases treatment, currently they are accounted above the EBITDA line. Basically, it's a general leasing accounting treatment that you give to any expenditure, and there is no creation of any liability or an asset in the balance sheet. But now, as per Ind AS 116, it will require lessee to recognize long-term leases, that is more than 12 months, in their balance sheet. That means they will have to create an asset, and also they will have to create a liability corresponding to that in their balance sheets. So CLSA says that this particular new accounting standard will have a significant impact on all these companies, the likes of PVR, Aditya Birla Fashion, Future Retail, Arvind Fashions, because now they'll have to account for additional expenditure. So that would mean they'll have to account for additional depreciation, additional interest. That will lead to ballooning of their balance sheet and will also reduce their PAT. So according to them, it will lead to ballooning of balance sheet, considerable reductions in PAT, also will impact the return or capital employed. Additionally, they will also increase the reported gearing of these companies. So these companies have leasing payments of around 5 to 19% of their total sales. So they will be impacted. However, we have to remember that these are just accounting treatments. Overall, in the operational capacity, nothing changes for the company. Just they have to make some changes to accounting in their books. Back to you.
Okay, all right. So, Sonal, thanks so much for that. Well, before we slip into a short break, keep an eye out on the markets. We are down with a cut of around 100 points odd. And just want to focus on Piramal Enterprises. Remember, the stock, the high point of the day was more than 2,100 rupees. Now it's on the verge of going down to around that 2,000 rupees odd. So even though they're getting money, they'll get 2,300 crores for this sale that they've done in Shriram Transport. If they go ahead and they sell their stake even in Shriram, SCUF, that is the City Union Finance, you'll get another 1,000 crores out there. But the market is clearly concerned about the exposure they have to various real estate companies, and that's why I think it's selling off as we speak. Sharp correction, 5% off the high point of the day on this sort of a news that normally would have perceived positively. Also, Shriram Transport, the high point was at around 1,500 rupees. They exited Shriram Transport at around 1,000 to around 1,030 rupees today. So that as well is giving you some bit of a concern that they sold it at such a sharp discount as well. Well, on that note, we'll slip into a short break. You come back, we'll tell you how to trade the Nifty. Ashwini Gujral and Prakash Kaba will join us. Stay with us.